So good morning, everybody. It is March 4th, 2019. Another video here about the Royals this morning. And I haven't made one in about a week, so I've been a little busy. Anyway, so lots has happened over the past week. Most notably, Salvador Perez is going to be lost for the year for the Royals, that's a huge blow to the Royals. Salvador Perez is the heart and soul of this franchise right now, and losing him it's a huge deal. And there's a segment of Royals fans out there who don't like Salvador Perez, and when I mean by they don't like him, they like him the person. Don't get me wrong. What they don't like is they don't like how he swings at everything. They don't like how his on-base percentage is not that great, and that they always seem to say that he's overrated. Well, the bottom line is that Salvador Perez brings more to the table than just his offensive numbers. It's his ability to control the pitching staff. It's his ability to control the running game, which last year he was phenomenal at. And it seems like every time that someone talks about something he does good, you'll have these I call the analytics army will come out and say something. They'll make a comment like, "Oh well, his pitch framing is rated very low among major league catchers." I'm like, okay, how do you measure pitch framing? So, regardless, Salvador Perez is out for the year. He's going to have Tommy John surgery, and due to a tear of his UCL, and that's a huge blow for the Royals. And there are a couple options the Royals could do. They could look at signing another catcher, or possibly trading for one. But before we talk about internal options, let's talk about those two options first. Signing somebody else. Well, let's talk about trade first. Salvador Perez is going to come back next year. He's going to be back in 2020. And actually taking this year off might be good for him, getting some rest. But he's going to be back in 2020, and he's going to probably be the starter. And I don't see a situation where the Royals go out and trade a major league player, or they trade a prospect for a starting catcher for one season. I just don't see that. If the Royals were in a position where they were like the 2015, if this had happened to the 2015 Royals, coming off losing the World Series to the Giants, I think the Royals would have made like a Zobrist or Cueto type trade in spring training to get a number one catcher, and some guy that they could rely on and who could lead that club. But I don't see them doing that this year, because even though I'm a little more optimistic than some people, and I'm usually not an optimistic person about the Royals, and I think the Royals could be a decent team this year. I'm not going to call it, they're not a playoff team, but I think they could surprise a lot of people. I don't see them going out and thinking that they're one piece away, especially considering how much Sal Perez means to the team. And it's not just the offense or the defense. It's what he brings to the club. It's what he brings to the clubhouse, to the community. Some people think the Salvi splash is kind of a weird deal, or they think it's overused. Look, that's his deal, and that's a big part of the Royals winning games at home. And Salvi is a guy that you just can't replace. Now, so they're not going to trade for anybody. Now let's talk about free agents. Well, it is March 4th, and how many free agent catchers who really could start, let's say I start 120 games, are there really out there at this time of the year? There's nobody out there. Going around the Twitterverse and the various Royals blogs, a lot of the comments made by people, and on Facebook too, is Martin Maldonado. Look, Martin Maldonado is 32, 33 years old, and he's going to command a salary of $3.5 to $4.5 million a year. And he's got a lifetime OPS of 638. And he doesn't get on base. He has a terrible batting average. He's got a little pop, but not nearly the same kind of power as Perez does. And I don't see what the difference is between him and Cam Gallagher or Melvis Valoria. I hope I pronounced that name right. I just don't see the difference between Maldonado and those guys. And he really is the best free agent catcher out there. So that's not really a deal that I think the Royals are going to go out and pursue. So, and if he's the best, and they're not going to get him because it's just doesn't make sense, they're going to stay internal. And Dayton Moore has been quoted as saying they're going to be looking at internal options to replace Salvador Perez. So who are those options? Well, right now there's only two guys on the 40-man roster, and that's Gallagher and Valoria. And we've seen Gallagher as a backup last year after Drew Butera was traded, and we've seen him in very small bits and pieces here and there. Gallagher's a guy who he's a big catcher. He's a big guy. He's got some power. I don't think he's ever going to get hit for high. He reminds me a lot of John Buck, actually, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, John Buck was a decent catcher for the Royals. He wasn't an all-star catcher by any means. I think he actually did make the all-star team with the Blue Jays one year. Anyway, so then the other guy they have on the 40-man roster is Valoria. Now, Valoria is the young kid. He's 20, 21 years old. He's very young. There's a lot of questions about his maturity level. He was slated to start a game in September last year, and it was like a day game, and he overslept, and he didn't get to the ballpark until right before first pitch. So that was now that is that a one-time deal or whatever? I'm not going to speak to that, but that's there's some questioning of his mental makeup and his maturity level at this age. I mean, he's a young kid, and think back to yourself when you were 20, 21 years old, some of the decisions that you made. So we'll see what happens with him. And they've also got, I'm trying to think who some of these other guys are, the minors that they're looking at. Gosh, I can't think of their names off the top of my head. But the Royals have quite a bit of top-level prospects at the catching position, which not all of them are going to be able to play, obviously. So I think some of them are going to be traded at some point. If I was a betting man, and sometimes I do play poker, what I would bet the Royals do is they go out and they sign a free agent catcher, and you're like, well, Matt, you just said they're not going to do that. Well, I don't think they're going to sign a free agent starting catcher. I think they are going to go out and sign a free agent catcher who is not a starter, who's a backup, to be the backup to Cam Gallagher. I think Cam Gallagher is the guy coming out of spring training. I don't think the Royals are ready to give Valoria the job on a day-to-day basis, and I think they want him playing every day in Omaha. You have to remember, when they called him up last year in September, he was already on the 40-man roster. He had never played above A-ball. And so, I mean, some guys can make that transition and make that jump and be just fine. But, man, it's a very difficult thing to do when you're going to, ask a guy who's that young, who's never played double-A ball, to go in and be the starting catcher on a Major League Baseball team. I don't see that. I think he has a lot of potential, a lot of promise. We saw that in bits and pieces last year in September when he did play. But I don't think the Royals are going to hand him over the starting reins. And I think because he's not going to be the starter, at least that's my opinion, I don't think the Royals are going to have him on the active roster, on the 25-man roster. So I think they are going to go out and try to look for a backup, and I think they're going to want to put Cam Gallagher out there on a day-to-day basis, or it could be a platoon type situation, where maybe Gallagher gets 3 of the 5 starting pitchers and the other guy gets 2 guys, or maybe it's 4 and 1. but I just don't think Valoria is going to break camp. Even though he probably has the most potential, I don't think he's quite ready to handle the everyday rigors of a Major League Baseball season. Now, is Cam Gallagher ready for that? I mean, I don't know, but he's going to have to be ready because he's the most ready catcher the Royals have in their system, ready to go right now, and the job is his, in my opinion. So, just a few more minutes here. I got to be pulling into my office, but so let's talk about a couple other things. Let's talk about the pitching real quick. The Royals have lost some games. They've won some games. I think they're 5-4, 6-4 right now. So they're doing okay, and okay, just making sure there's a. All right, never mind. Just paying attention to the road here while I talk. One of the things that the Royals have done is they've had a couple games where they have really pitched well, and some games where they have been absolutely blown out. So let's talk about Brian Flynn first. Again, in the last video, or the video before last, whatever it was, we talked about Brian Flynn, who did not pitch well, and he had a game the other day where he was absolutely rocked again. And it might have been yesterday, actually. And Flynn is a guy that they're counting on, and he has looked absolutely horrible so far in spring training. Chris Ellis, the Rule 5 pick they got, along with Sam McWilliams. Chris Ellis has been a disaster so far. He has been lit up like a Christmas tree, and he can't get guys out. His stuff just doesn't look good. So the Royals are going to have a decision to make. I think Flynn is a guy that I don't know what his situation is with his options, but I do think that he's going to have a. If he's got options left, they'll send him to the minors, even though he's a guy that they're counting on. But this guy has never been a guy who's going to. I think there's been some bullpen savior by any means, but he's a guy that the Royals were counting on. So if he continues to pitch poorly, he's not going to make the roster. Chris Ellis is a more interesting case. The Royals spent a Rule 5 pick on him, and if they think that he's got some potential in the long run, they're going to have to offer up a player back to whoever they got him from. I don't know what organization he came from. I don't see the Royals doing that. I just don't see anything about this guy. I think the Royals were taking a lottery pick on him, and similar to like last year with Brad Keller, the Royals are trying to strike lightning, or they're trying to win the lottery here, get lightning in a bottle, see what they can do. I think McWilliams is a guy that has a much better chance of panning out in the long run and the short term as well. I think Ellis is. You might see the Royals offer him back to whoever they got him from, which is what would have to happen if they didn't put him on the 25-man roster. Is it Cody Green? Is that his name? I don't think that's his first name, but his last name is Green. We got him. I think it was from the Cardinals last year. He's looked really poor as well. He was kind of an outside shot to make the roster, in my opinion. I don't think he does. Again, we've still got 3 weeks left of spring training, but this is a guy I don't think really makes the roster. And Ben Lively has also not looked very, very good either. Who has looked good, though, is Kyle Zimmer and Josh Staumont. These are guys that I think, reevaluating what the bullpen situation is going to look like coming out of spring, I would have to put both those guys on a 25-man roster at this point. They've both looked really, really good. And I think McWilliams has done enough so far. Now, he's had some stretches where he's not looked good, but he's had some stretches where he's looked really good, too, so far in spring. So I still think McWilliams is an easy shoe-in, especially as a Rule 5 guy. But, he'll be the last man in the bullpen, regardless, until he can prove that he can pitch consistently. Similar to what Brad Keller did last year. As for the offense has kind of been hit or miss. You know, my favorite guy last year, who I wanted to win the first base job, Ryan O'Hearn, who came on so strong at the end of the season when he finally got called up. Ryan O'Hearn has not played well so far in spring training. And I say not played well, he just hasn't been getting a lot of hits. And again, it's early. I think the Royals are going to have a very long leash with him. But they have been playing some other guys at first base. They've, let me get stopped here. They have played Hunter Dozier at first. They've played, Swindell, of course. I don't think Swindell, I just don't think the Royals trust him. So, but it's interesting they've been playing Dozier at first a little bit more lately. And Nicky Lopez has played fairly well so far. You know, this might be a situation where if O'Hearn completely bombs spring training, and Dozier has looked pretty decent, actually, and he's looked like he's got some more speed to his game, which has really kind of impressed me. Maybe it's a situation where maybe O'Hearn doesn't make the club, and maybe Dozier is your first baseman, and Whit Merrifield slides to third, and Lopez plays second base. I mean, because Lopez looks like he can fit and hit the major league pitching. So again, we've got to kind of have to see what's going to go on here. So we'll evaluate more guys this week and see what happens. That's just kind of my lay of the land so far. I don't think O'Hearn is into any risk of losing his job, and I think he would have to look so poor and maybe get 2 more hits the rest of spring training in no home runs and just look absolutely awful for them to not break camp with him as their first baseman. But again, still 3 weeks to go, lots of time. Real quick, Bubba Starling has looked really good. And honestly, and Billy Hamilton has been an absolute disaster so far for the first 3 weeks of spring training. Billy Hamilton's a guy I was very much against signing, and he looks old. His defense has not looked good. He's made multiple errors so far. I don't understand why the Royals now, he did have a couple of hits in another game. I think it was yesterday or Saturday. They put him at the top of the lineup. Look, if he somehow convinces Ned Yost to hit at the top of the lineup, kind of like Escobar did, I'm going to start losing faith in Yost. And I'm a Yost guy. I like Ned Yost. But Billy Hamilton is not a leadoff guy. He doesn't get on base. So, again, if they just cut him completely, it just have to eat his salary. Again, it's a 1-year contract. I would not be, that would not disappoint me at all. Because you know what? Bubba Starling looks like he might have found something. And maybe him getting non-tendered last year and going through the waiver process, maybe that was a wake-up call to him. Who knows? We'll see what happens. But I'm excited to see what happens over the next couple weeks. We'll be back in the next couple days with another video. Thanks for watching.